Hello, my name is Bill Keach and I work for Sunbelt Computer Software. Today we'd like to talk about the WebView2 technology introduced in 10.5 for PLB-Win and PLB Client. When we look at the language reference manual, you'll see that in the introduction there's a new section talking about both the new web technologies that we are starting to use and the new WebView2 support. WebView2 Control allows us to embed web technologies, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript in our native apps. It uses the new Microsoft Edge as a rendering engine to display web content in those native apps. So what does this mean? What it actually means is that controls that we've used before for the PLB web server now can be used for PLB-Win and PLB Client. And these controls can actually be on the same form as regular Win32 controls. As a small example of this, I have a program that will bring up a form that is going to contain mixed Win32 and web controls. And we'll just take a look at this interaction. So I will bring up the form. And once it's up, you will see that the designer now has both when working on a mixed form, a Windows tab in the toolbox and a new Web tab in the toolbox. That allows us to add web objects. And that when we take a look at the various objects, for example, the properties of this button, we will see that the button is now marked as a web button, where a Win32 button is just marked as a button, so that you're also able to tell the difference between web objects on your form and regular Windows objects on your form. Now, as support for the displaying and creation of web objects, we are now using Bootstrap 5, jQuery, and jQuery UI, so that these technologies are all preloaded whenever you create a new form, or whenever you create a HTML control that is a web-based HTML control. Some of the advantages of being able to use web-based controls are that we can now have additional styles of buttons, checkboxes, and we can continue to enhance the current PLB-Win UI beyond our current limitations of Win32. An example of this is, of course, this new style button on an outline that we could also change, for example, to have a spinner if we wish. We can change some of the context styling if we want. Change it to success, which will change to green. Change it back to default. At the same time, this allows us to also use any of the various web controls or web classes or web capabilities on any of these controls, and yet still manipulate the HTML controls through the designer as if they were any other regular control. Now in this case, as another example, we'll take a look at the icon and see that we're actually loading this icon from a SVG file. So this allows us to integrate different formats of images as well. And of course, we still have support for, in this case, the regular HTML controls, so that you can extend it by, of course, adding your own HTML controls that you wish. In this case, we're just using a button group to create 3 buttons together. Now, because Bootstrap 5 is already built in, we can actually use any of the capabilities of Bootstrap 5 in an HTML control to use it. Let me bit there. So it looks nice. Let me save this off. And close up the designer and let me run the program. And we'll put a breakpoint here just to show the eventing. And so when we run the program, we have the regular Win32 button, the new HTML button, a SVG, just a label, and as an example, this new 3 button type of button we have. When we break in here and we take a look at the events, we can see the event right here that has been sent in, which is a jQuery event. And you can notice that we have all this mixed just in a regular PLB-Win program. Let me continue the program, stop, get out of the debugger, and go back. Now what this means is that programs that used to only work under the web server, such as the web style, now can be used directly under PLB-Win. So when we want web style, all it does is it allows you to manipulate CSS. In this case, we'll apply a box shadow and a green border to this panel. We'll just keep on adding things, change the border radius. Let's give it a little bit of padding. Put a background gradient in. And all this is running directly just through PLB-Win as if it was a regular program. Now, the question is, how do I make one of these new forms up? Well, that actually ends up being fairly simple. You bring up the designer. And then now when you select a new form, you end up having a dialog that you can set up. And you can choose that the form is default, which means that you can manipulate it on any file basis, or Win32 only, Win32 WebView mixed, or WebView only. So in this case, we'll pick a Win32 WebView. And what that happens now is we have a form that I have both Windows objects, such as a Windows checkbox here, and web objects, which I'll put a web checkbox here. You notice that the web checkbox is styled in a bit more modern look, and at the same time we have been able to add newer properties to it so that we can make it look like a switch, as an example. So in this case, we'll say switch equals true. And now we have a checkbox that looks like a switch. So with these additional technologies, we're going to be able to continue to improve on the UI that we already have and provide you with more functionality for the basic controls. So thank you for listening to me today, and hopefully in the future that you'll start using some of our new capabilities for WebView2, and let us know how it goes. Thank you very much. Goodbye.